General Flynn, George. General, and particularly so many new people have come to our movement, particularly in 2024. Whole new coalitions have come, particularly to Make America Healthy Again. The show this show has been explosive in its growth. So there are many people maybe not familiar. They know Mike Flynn today, but may not know the background of General Flynn. General, you were one of the great warriors working from a crystal in Afghanistan, on the attack all the time. Really took intel and really made it a force multiplier in combat in Afghanistan. Then you came back, you were head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, which I actually tell people is where the pipe hitters are versus CIA.
Exactly.
And you were probably one of the most controversial. You got into with President Obama right off the bat. You were President Trump's advisor early on. I remember we got you a meeting, I think, in August or September of 2015 to go up and advise the president and start talking about geopolitics and national security strategy. Then you were his first national security advisor. And one of the reasons they came after you so hard was your war against the deep state. But a lot of it's focused on the fact that you knew the Muslim Brotherhood and radical jihad better than anybody. The situation in Qatar. I mean, I have no problem with people going there for a conference. The Qataris are clearly, underwriting the development in Gaza, et cetera. But it is not lost on me, even when President Trump designated the Muslim Brotherhood, which you know, because you worked with me on this, we got no traction at all in the first term. Now President Trump's actually done it, but it's looking at Egypt, Jordan, Syria, when really Turkey and Qatar are the big issues. Should Qatar just come forward and have a complete open it up and explain what their relationship has been with the Muslim Brotherhood and radical groups in the past, and show people today with that you cannot question it, that they no longer support, finance, or supply logistics to radical jihad? And I'm not talking about allowing the Taliban or allowing Hamas to be headquartered there and to do negotiations. I'm talking about something far deeper, which is really logistical, financial support of radical jihad throughout the world, sir?
Qatar is the foundation, Steve, of a large terrorist organization and network globally. And so one of the things that they're going to have to do, and Trump is the guy to do it, is to basically disavow themselves from the Muslim Brotherhood, which I don't believe that they'll ever do. The other thing, one of the pieces of Qatar is that they have the Al Jazeera network, and Al Jazeera was always the mouthpiece for Al Qaeda, ISIS, you name the organization, and Al Jazeera continues to be the mouthpiece for them, as well as many other left-leaning European-based outlets too. So the financial, the logistic, the command and control, all of the sort of military terminology that runs commands and basically provides intent and vision for a global network emanates right there in Qatar for a large swath of some of the problems that we're facing today. Hamas, Hezbollah, Al Qaeda, the cooperation between, if you get into the weeds about the different ideologies within the Arab mind, right, Sunni versus Shia, etc. But that is what Qatar provides. I mean, Qatar is 650,000 people that sit on a $1 trillion budget, right? I mean, or more. So it is a very powerful piece of geography and ideology.
And they've infiltrated the American education system, whether it's New York City public schools,
no, they're the largest.
Universities. I mean, for a group, you've got to remember history here. They were within 72 hours of extinction in June of 20. Right. When we got back from that Riyadh meeting where they just threw down hard and said we're not going to do this, UAE and the Saudis came within 72 hours of removing the royal family, and they took a lesson from that. We somehow have to get engaged with the West. My point is, if you really want to do it, and I know people are trying to work with them and say, hey, look, if you really want to do it, we got to stop playing games. President Trump, as you remember, Mike, would say no games, no games. Here, it does seem like at one level it might be a game, and we have to have absolute, complete transparency on their. They told us no, essentially, in May of 17. I think they need to be much more open and talk about these networks, and they disavowed involvement. There's no money. This whole thing with the American education system, this whole situation in Texas, which, as you know, I know you're getting involved. I'm involved. The situation in Florida. We just need to have, if they want to be a broker of peace and assist President Trump. If they want to do something in Gaza, they can't be at the same time be underwriting terrorism in Europe and the United States, sir.
Yeah, you know what, Steve? I don't mind what they do over there. I don't mind what they do in their country, whatever they want to do in their country. What I don't want is I don't want them to do it inside of our country. I do not want their ideology, and I do not want their money being poured into our undergraduate and graduate level programs here to the tune of billions of dollars a year to change a mindset, a cultural mindset in the United States of America. So if Qatar, do what you want to do. All these other countries overseas, we have to deal with China because China is a big nation, right? We do a lot of trade with China. We have to deal with China, but I don't want the Chinese ideology here in America. I don't want their Marxist communist ideology here in America. I don't want this Islamist ideology here in America. America has our own culture and our own way of our own constitutional system. We don't want Sharia law in this country. I mean, if Trump can get that message across and then make the changes that are necessary here inside, because I know one of the things we wanted to talk a little bit about was the national security strategy, which I think is very externally focused. I mean, he's got some things where he talks about securing the border and economic, freedom and some of the things that he had to talk about internally. But the national security strategy that the president just came out with and just signed off on is really a very globally focused strategy. And that's not what the American people want. The American people want what is best for America. And we have to stop this idea of, what I call and what I wrote about here just recently in this long march through the institutions. So how has this country how the United States now talking about, how do we get to where we are, Steve? We got here because there is a long march of not only bureaucrats, but Marxists and neo-Marxists and Marxism inside of our system of government, inside of our agencies, activities, departments, whatever, inside of our government. And that includes all branches of government, judiciary, legislative, and executive branch. And that long march has been going on for 50 years or more. And so here we are. We now have inside of our system. So, we can talk about Qatar, but Trump, what he's got to do is he's got to stop this madness about allowing these. It's not just Qatar, it's China and particularly China, because they're the big dog. It's all these overseas elements that breed and spew communism, that breed and spew Marxism, that breed and spew Islamism.
Let me take it another way, just for a second, because first off, if Grace and Mo, let's push out. General Flynn wrote a very long, detailed, analytical piece about the national security strategy. If Elizabeth and Mo and Grace can also push out President Trump's, it's 33 pages long. Everybody in the WarRoom posse this weekend must read it. Totally free. We're going to put it up. You've got to read it, every page of it. And Mike Flynn's done an analysis. We're going to have Laura Logo on next week. We got Captain Fennell. We're going to do a whole week of people coming on and giving different perspectives of it. And one level, it's absolutely amazing. But he does put Europe at the very end. And in Europe, it's one of the most brutal assessments of Europe in a reality check. He says, look, I don't know in 20 years, we don't know if there's even going to be these NATO allies, if they're even going to be around and control their countries. You're seeing the potential for civilizational collapse in Europe. Yeah. I think one thing that struck me, and I think it struck you and others that are big supporters of President Trump, is that what's happened in Europe is very much happening here in the United States in a very early stage, and it must be stopped. It's the deep state. It's the Red-Green Alliance. Neo-Marxists with Islamists in the institutions of our government, in the educational institutions, in the corporations, in law enforcement, in intelligence. And that's the part that's not in the national strategy memo. It doesn't really talk about the national strategy of the United States going forward in regards to this deep state takeover, sir.
Yeah, if we were alive in the 1500s and 1600s, Steve, we'd be having the same goddamn conversation, just from a different viewpoint, the way things existed back then. So here we are in the 21st century, and frankly, my sort of bombshell is the EU is totally gone. It is an organization that has lost sight of what its real purpose and goals were at the very beginning. So I think the EU needs to go away. The reshaping of the European continent is taking place before our very eyes, and there is a massive split between the globalists and those that want nationalism in their own countries, those that want to protect their own sovereignty. Matt Boyle talked about the interview with the Greek, I think the foreign minister, he said, and how they're like they love Donald Trump because Trump is fighting for national sovereignty. Trump is fighting for something that the European Union wants to get rid of. And so that's why I think the European Union is something that probably, and again, these are big institutions. NATO is another institution. He said Matt Whitaker was there at Qatar, right? I mean, why is Matt Whitaker at Qatar? I mean, what is he there to do? Get more money from Qatar? NATO is another institution that was created as a defensive chartered institution with originally about 14 to 16 countries. Now it has close to 30 or 40. I mean, we have to relook everything in our relationships between the United States and Europe.
Okay, homework assignment is to read the national security strategy. The national military strategy, Mike, will be what, in another 30 days. They'll put out the Pentagon will put out, the Department of War will take the overall strategy and then put out a military strategy around it. One of the biggest things is hemispheric defense. He goes out of his way to talk about hemispheric defense, particularly the Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine, which is full spectrum dominance in Latin America. And I think he's seen from Argentina to Venezuela, maybe some questions of what's happening in Brazil, but you're starting to see that. Overall, net, I know you got another piece coming out today. Is your biggest issue that it's a good strategy, good start for Trump, be looking at all these hot spots in Eurasian landmass and a pivot back here to the hemisphere, but your concern is there's not enough focus on the deep state here and what you really have to do to secure, because those are the guys coming after Trump the worst. It ain't the Russians. It's definitely the CCP with their 100%. Minions here, but you got a deep state that is looking to remove Trump right after the midterms. If they don't assassinate him first, and people, you got to have that on the table because they tried twice. General Flynn.
Yeah, a couple of things. Number one, the national security strategy that the president just signed off on, it's very, it's focused more globally, externally than it is internally. And I'll address some of that here in a second. I think it's a good forward-facing document. It basically says to the world, America is ready to lead again. So and from that standpoint, very good. I think that the issue about Europe that we talked about on the last segment is something that people need to pay very close attention to. Let's see if Trump actually follows through. I do think that one of the things that it falls short on is a lot of this ideological stuff that's going on here in the United States, right? The ideological pressure, the media manipulation that we have, the idea of this Marxism and neo-Marxism ideology that is definitely inside and has infiltrated into the institutions of our government. There's not enough discussion about how the president of the United States in this national security strategy, which should be both foreign and domestic, has to deal with. We have many compromised oversight systems, as an example. We have a very, very complex election system and technologies. And people in this country are like still going, what the hell is going on? Why do I care about Europe? Why do I care about the Middle East? I need to care about my country right here and whether or not we have a free and fair election. So one of the things that we did, and we actually wrote a national security strategy as part of an institute that I'm part of, the Gold Institute for International Strategy. We wrote one back last June. And I like to think that it drove some of what the White House has in this current document. And you mentioned the National Defense Strategy, which I know has been being worked in parallel, and it'll likely be out here in another week or two. Maybe it'll come out right after the holidays. So we have to pay very close attention to that. Something that I want to put a fingertip on, or a poke in the chest on, with Matt Boyle and people out I hear say this a lot. Steve, war is the norm in human history. Peace is the aberration. And we have to figure out Trump and what Trump wants. He's a historic guy. Like him or not, this guy wants to stop wars. When you have these machines that require submission by the American people, called the military-industrial complex, the intelligence community complex, NATO is another military-industrial complex. You got to have a boogeyman. You got to have Russia out there. I mean, there's a lot of things going on right now globally that we can basically stop or shut down for a period of time and say, okay, what is it that we want to do? Trump, I really firmly believe that if Trump doesn't refocus, and I mean refocus in a very, very determined way right here at home in the next couple of months, if not the next year, we're going to lose the midterm elections and Katie barred the door. Now we're in a place where, and that's why I wrote this 2-part series. Part of it is already published out there. I'm gonna push another one out here today. I mean, we have to regain who we are as a nation, Steve, and that's what you've been harping on all the time. These people, these organizations, these structures, these big structures, they want to drive us into submission. America, and to your audience, Steve, and directly to your audience, we are at an inflection point in history. If Donald J. Trump does not understand that and does not get this right, we're screwed. And we will move on a different path towards what these Marxists want us to move towards. And this axis of alliance, they call it the red-green alliance. I call it the axis of resistance. The main body is right here in the United States of America, inside of our government.
I do think he understands it. I think people around him have got to take more action on this. We try to do this every day and highlight it. Look, watching it, the birth of the nation, or winning the revolution, getting our independence, and the birth of the nation, which were all three separate things inextricably linked. Lincoln at the rebirth of the nation, and Trump at the reclamation of the nation, reclaiming its greatness. It is an inflection point. I think he does understand that. That's why he's a world historical figure. But all of us have got to pile in here, and where we see it drifting a little bit, we got to say, hey, maybe we need a course correction. Right now, our advice, I know your advice to President Trump, you can't go too hard on the deep state. You just can't. And we're going to have Julie Kelly up here next about some of the stuff's going on at DOJ right now. And understand Pam and these guys are overwhelmed. Cash is overwhelmed. It's about this pipe bomber. I want to do one thing where we're here talking about the deep state. We got a clip on Pete Hegseth. And I want to make a statement that you can tell when somebody's effective when the deep state comes after him. Pete Hegseth, there's an onslaught about Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, that I've only seen in my involvement in politics, I don't know, the last 15, 20 years, is against Mike Flynn. Let's go ahead and play it, and then General Flynn, I want your advice on this.
Pete Hegseth needs to go now. You wrote, Pete Hegseth, however, was elected by no one. He's an unprofessional and sometimes unstable appointee who does not seem to comprehend the seriousness of the office he occupies, does not respect the senior officers who serve this country, and does not seem to care at all about the people of the U.S. military, except that he's worried that too many of them are fat or women. Hegseth is unqualified and incompetent, and he should have been fired months ago, end quote. Arguably, he should have never been put in the job, and there were people who had reservations and misgivings then who seemed to sort of overlook them and say, well, you know what, we're going to give this one to Trump. He's turning out to be not just a danger, but deadly.
Hegseth was the most dangerous and incompetent of all of the dangerous and incompetent appointees. And, the list goes on, not just Patel and Noem, but Kennedy and Gabbard and so many others. I mean, this really is just a clown car.
I think that's Nichols. That he actually was an instructor at the Naval War College. I do not understand why Milley has not been recalled to active duty, why Kelly has not been recalled to active duty, court martials, and I don't understand why this guy's sucking down a pension from the U.S. government. Another very dangerous guy, totally out of line. General Flynn, your thoughts? And I tell you, last night we were going to cut a cold open, but I said let's push the cold open because virtually all last night on MSNBC and CNN is just a complete beatdown on the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth. Your thoughts, sir?
Yeah, first of all, Pete Hegseth, I think, is doing an extraordinary job. He's being incredibly transparent. He's bringing a level of leadership, energy, intellect, and transparency to the Department of War. Number one, he's got a great relationship with President Trump, which is really critical. He's got a great relationship with Tulsi Gabbard, which is really critical. 70% of the U.S. intelligence community is in the Department of War. I think one of the things that Pete Hegseth needs to do is I think he does need to look internal, and I think that some of the folks around him know what I'm talking about. He needs to look internal across the whole of the department for those subversives that do exist there, and remove them very quickly. And there are not many, but there are a few. And some, dress like they're on your team. So don't pay attention to the media. Get out there and keep doing what you're doing. the fact that when Pete Hegseth stood up for Mitch Bradley, who I've known for a long, long time, and I'm part of the development, Steve. You mentioned me at the very beginning. I'm part of the development of what's called "It Takes a Network to Defeat a Network," right? This restructuring of how we do targeting. Mitch Bradley was a commander when we were first retooling how we need to fight our enemies, no matter where they are, whether they're here domestically or whether they're overseas. So Pete Hegseth, I think, is doing all the right things. I do think that there are some internal things that he's got to look at from the types of people that he has around him. Disregard this noise from the left. They will be brutal. One of the things for my message for President Donald J. Trump is you need to continue to have his back, as I know that you do, and let Pete do the things that you asked him to do, which is to bring energy, leadership, a vision and a transparency, and a sort of a regrouping of what we need in the Department of War now. Because I'm going to tell you, when you can't have recruiting, you can't have the kinds of things that we have in our country right now all those numbers are looking pretty good. So screw these people from whatever these organizations are and these media outlets are. They're going to do that all the time. Who the hell are they to talk about what is right or not for this country? The American people voted for one guy, President Donald J. Trump. This is the team he put into place, and we need to stand behind them. And I will tell you, the majority of the American people stand behind Pete Hegseth.
General Flynn, I haven't had a chance to ask you this, but the building is very big and complicated institution to manage. You spent your entire life frontline as a warrior, then you came back head of DI. If the president was asking, he's got these special envoys, like Sergio's ambassador to India, but he's special envoy to the Central Asian, Eurasian landmass. Yeah. If the president asked you to, hey, go over, come back as some sort of a special assistant or some kind of senior position to help Pete Hegseth over in the War Department, would you be open to that?
Yeah, 100%, and I do that anyway. But yeah, I would, and sort of roving ambassador or whatever the hell the president needs at this point in time. We're almost a year into his administration. We're seeing the challenges that are coming, that are going to be hitting him left and right. Trump wants to be the peacetime president, and he is. He's done so much to stop many of these fights around the world.
Could he have a better selection as a pipe hitter to take on the deep state than Mike Flynn? Could you name one?
Not one,
sir.
Not one. No, Steve. I mean, if he put me in that role, Steve, they would their pants. Excuse my Irish.
General Mike Flynn, where do people go? You're putting out the second analytical piece this afternoon. I want everybody to read it over the weekend. Where do folks go? Where do they go to get all your content? You got a couple of films up. Twitter, yep. All of it, sir. Where they go?
They can go to generalflynn.com, or on X, I'm at GenFlynn, Gen Flynn, and I'll post this second part of this two-part series here today. And people need to read this, Steve. They need to read it because this is exactly what has happened to our country. And I lay out 6 solutions in part 2. This is part 1 that you're looking at, folks. I lay out 6 solutions, that range from everything from our cultivating the nuclear family, redesigning our education system, getting us off the welfare state that Lyndon B. Johnson created. I mean, there's some really doable solutions that our country can take on. President Trump is the guy to do it, and in many cases, he's starting to do it. He just needs to coalesce around that, and that is the America First attitude in me, Steve.
I've actually thought of your title as you've been talking. It's Special Envoy to the Deep State, General Mike Flynn. That would set him off. That would give MSNBC a couple of days of programming, would it not, sir? Mike Flynn, General, thank you so much